Hello, welcome back. Hope you've enjoyed your lunch break. Let's get the business track back on track. Have you ever wondered how data democratization works in a real-life company? Our next speaker, Laurentiu Matei, Business Intelligence Director at eMAG, will tell us all about the organizational, cultural, educational, and technical challenges of data democratization within a data-driven company. Laurentiu, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm having some emotions. It's the first time in a while when I'm on a real stage. Past year, I presented at Big Data Week from my room. Hopefully next year, we'll get to see everybody here. I realized this morning that I cannot pronounce the name of my presentation, so we'll discuss today about democratization of data. I said I will talk about all kinds of challenges, including technical. It will be less technical today. If you want technical stuff, I recommend you tomorrow evening, the Big Data meetup, where my colleague Marius will get really technical. But for today, we will discuss a bit about me. I will present myself. We will discuss culture and principles. We will discuss some benefits of data democratization. We'll discuss about access to data, data literacy, scaling data democratization, data governance, and some things about the organization, about how we do it. As I said, it's more about people than it's about technology, and you'll see why. There is something that I want to say, that is that there is no one good way to do data and analytics. This is a process, and I will tell you about where we are now. Things can change in the future. They definitely change a lot in the past year for us. About me, I am BAI and ERP Director at eMAG since February last year. I took office, and about 2 weeks after that, we went home, and I had to work with my team remote and get to know them remote. I finished Faculty of Automatic Control in Bucharest in 2003. Yes, I'm the other guy from Alexandria, Tellerman. I developed software for various industries, basically all my life. I joined eMAG in 2011 as a software developer, just the first Black Friday, and part of my job back then was to optimize backend systems to make sure they stay up for Black Friday, with pretty bad results for the first year, I must say. I'm leading people since 2013. I started as a team lead in software development and software development manager. The most complicated part about technology is people. It's never about technology. So the problem is usually somewhere between the keyboard and the chair. So I will discuss about the first thing about data democratization. Getting the people to know that they need data and getting the people to use data. And we at eMAG started a process where we defined some company principles. We became a really large company with thousands of employees. And it's hard to tell everyone what to do in every situation. So we need to have some principles that guide our work. And this is based on Ray Dalio's work on principles. We adapted that, and we surveyed our company to see what our principles are. And we ended up defining 7 principles that guide us in our work. And the thing is, 3 of those principles are data related. The first principle is that we understand the client, and understanding the client in e-commerce is not about, or is rarely about, going and asking questions to the customers, because they are not physically in your shop. So you have to look at data and see traces of what they've been doing, what they liked, what they didn't like, and what worked for them, what helped them, and what not. Another principle is it says directly that we make decisions supported by data. And this is coming from the top. The first thing you get when you are hired at eMAG in the induction is that you get these principles and you know how we work. We make decisions supported by data. We don't make assumptions. We don't say we do it this way because the boss says we should do it this way. We make decisions supported by data. And this is really complicated sometimes. I'm having the issue of measuring our work as a data department, and this proves to be harder than measuring others. But we know that we have to do this way. When my boss asks me, how are things going? And I go and say, hey, pretty okay, we've been working on this and that. And he says, what did you optimize? What are the indicators that say that you were fine? Also, we assess the impact of our projects, and we assess the impact of our projects using data, of course. In order to decide whether a project was good or bad, whether we need to continue it or discard it, we need to look at data. We need to have beforehand some KPIs that measure the success of a certain project, and definitely after the project is implemented, we need to look at whether that project is successful or not using those indicators that we defined. I'll mention some benefits of data democratization and some ways, some types of data democratization. I told you this word is hard. So the first thing is we use descriptive analytics. We need to know that something has happened, and this allows us to act fast. Maybe act before anyone else notices it. Definitely, it's worth to act before the customer notices that there's a problem, or before we notice that there's no more cash in our bank account. Now, there's a bonus here. If you can deep dive in your data and see why something went wrong, you need. It's easier to have a dashboard. It's harder to deep dive into all those aggregations and see what exactly went wrong. Why is a certain indicator red? We also have predictive analytics, and this is the next stage where we try to say what is likely to happen given the data that we have and prepare for those outcomes. Now, this already implies at least a high-level understanding of machine learning and AI. All people in the business, this is not about the data guys. The business people need to understand what AI is, what AI can do and what AI cannot do. And the same for machine learning and data science and big data and all those buzzwords. If they expect that they come to my office and find data from Star Trek that is able to answer them all their questions, that is not the AI we have today. That setting that expectation will not help. Having the expectation that AI will be able to predict what the traffic in this Black Friday will be if they have the data from the last Black Friday and some other variables that we take into account, that may work. Another kind of analytics, the next stage, is having prescriptive analytics, have a plan. So, okay, we have data, we have numbers, but what do we do if a dashboard goes red? And it is too often that I see that when a dashboard goes red, everybody gets into panic. That's not a plan. You need to have a plan. If this dashboard goes red, you need to do something to, I don't know, cut funds to something, put more funds into something. This is having a plan, having business models, having decision trees, getting to know what the chances are of different things happening, and taking action. Now, measuring benefits is hard. I mentioned the activity of my teams. I still find it harder to measure these benefits. Working with data, working with big data is expensive. And it can get really expensive if people don't know what exactly they need. So you need to measure what are your benefits. Why are we investing in something? What do we expect to get in return? Now, the first step in data democratization is giving people access to data. And this is easy for smaller companies. But things really get complicated with scale. When the data that's coming in starts to be massive, not big, massive. When the company gets bigger in terms of employees, when you have thousands of employees trying to access that massive data, if they don't know what they want, it's getting even more complicated because they will be making some really expensive queries and dive-ins. Now, it's also important to realize that there are several personas, several kinds of users accessing the data. It's not just about giving everyone the same level of access. So the first thing, and most people in the company will have access to such a thing, it's operational dashboards. And these are organized around different functions. For example, people in the warehouse see that they need to ship some, I don't know, let's say 1,000 parcels by 3 o'clock. They have a dashboard that says, hey, you have to deliver, to prepare 1,000 parcels, and you prepared 500, and but it took you 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes, so you need to hurry up. People need to make those decisions. So team leads in the warehouse don't need the warehouse director to come there and say, hey, you're lagging behind. This is the ultimate access. People in the showroom have a target. They know at each point how much did they sell out of their target for the day. People in marketing also always know if they're lagging behind their target, so they need to take action. The next level is managerial dashboards, and this is where a manager knows that things are generally okay. The problem begins when things are not okay, when the dashboard goes red. And that's when these managerial dashboards that are usually easy to do technically, they are complicated in terms of finding one KPI that is a picture of the whole business. Now, the things get complicated when these dashboards get red and you need to deep dive to see what exactly is wrong, who you need to call to fix the issue. And having that drill down capability is really the technical complex part. That's where you go into the big data and you need tools to deep dive, to drill down into that data until you find the culprit of a problem. Now, there is another very complicated use case, is ad hoc analysis, where someone has an idea, and that someone usually is the CEO or some other C-level, and they say, hey, what if we do I don't know what, or what happens if we do that? And this is where we look at data in a way in which we never looked before, and we need to give a fast answer. And this is where your data lake, your whatever buzzword you have, your data warehouse needs to be accessible for the people with the right skills to deep dive into that data and make the analysis. Another level is having the data science being able to access the data. And this is sometimes more complicated than it should be. And it happened to us. And people don't, they think it's easy. You see a dashboard and you think, okay, these guys, the BI guys, have the data for running some analysis. But the thing is that more often than not, the data is not in the right format for data science. The data is not at the right aggregation level for data science. And the data is not easily joinable in between different reports. So you need to take that into account and take measures. And also the last use case is, and this is happening more and more recently, is having feedback loops. Sorry. Traditionally, PI reporting was not considered production and was not treated as such. So you would have people accepting downtimes easily. Nowadays, data that is processed within the data teams now is fed back into applications. You get customers being split into different cohorts. You get customers getting different offers based on what we learned about them, about their preferences. So data is fed back to the production systems, and that's why it's very important to make sure that data infrastructure is treated as production infrastructure. A very important thing is data literacy. And this can drive the cost down, or it can explode it, because people will come and ask, and if people don't have the right knowledge, they will ask for everything, and they will not know what to do with the data. So what we're doing here is we are starting from the induction. I told you, we tell people that we make decisions using data, and we show the people what data do they have in their department, what are the reports, what are the, I don't know, data sets that they can use. We're building documentation where people can search and see what a KPI means. This is crazy how complicated it is, because we're not that special at eMAG. I've seen this everywhere. People have the same KPI and with the same name, and they mean different things by it. And I'm tired of how many times we had the discussion of what the customer is. It should be easy, but it never is. So you need to have a documentation and define what a customer is. And I will give you a simple example. Is it Johnny who bought something, or is it Johnny's company where there are also some 10 other people working? You need to provide support where people can ask and receive answers fast. When things go wrong, they need to have someone to talk to. We are now starting to build data communities and business partners. And this is something that is complicated to do, but it should help. And I've seen it working in other places, and I've seen it working in open source. We're trying to apply it internally, where people with similar interests in certain tools can work together and share what they're working on. And business partners are people from my department that go into business and try to understand the needs of that certain department in terms of data literacy. The challenge here is that I was expecting that these people who will be working part-time, the need for business is that they will need someone full-time to work with them. Last but not least, you need to provide training. and training for the data people and for the business people. And for training, it's important to understand a few things, and I will list them here, but there is training everywhere. They don't have to be, in the business, they don't have to be data specialists, but they need to understand a few things. They need to understand biases, the availability bias, the emotions bias, the confirmation, framing, overconfidence. These are all important things because they can make you having perfectly good data, they can make you make the wrong decisions. People need to have a basic understanding of statistics. It's easy to count, I don't know, 5 chairs. But when you have a large population, this simple thing, counting things, is not working anymore. And you need to have an idea of distributions, of samples, of correlations versus causations, because things happen by chance all the time. And if you look at something and see 2 things that maybe correlate at some point, it doesn't mean that one thing causes another. And people need to understand that. Also, we are running A/B tests all the time. But we need to ask ourselves, is this significant, what I've done? Is this difference that I'm seeing between 2 numbers, will it stay the same if I increase the number? Is my population selected properly? So people in the business need to understand that these things exist, because otherwise things can look really simple, and actually they are not that simple and can make you make wrong decisions. You need to implement in the company a culture of experimentation. And this is hard because experimentation means doing all kinds of things, see what works and what fails, and learn from that. And that means that a lot of things will fail, and you need not to punish people for failing. You need to know that this is a learning environment. And only last is the training that everybody does. Hey, this is our tool, let's get you into Excel training or Tableau training or Click or Looker or whatever training you have. I said scaling is another issue because when you start a company, maybe you have a small shop, you can do all your analysis in an Excel file. And it will work for quite a while. I have a small story. I have our procurement guy. He was getting a detailed invoice from our phone provider. And he was looking at various things. If someone, I don't know, forgot their data in some really expensive roaming country or things like that. And it worked for him for years, up until now when we got to the point where he calls me and says, well, guess what? Our detailed invoice has more than 1 million lines. I cannot do it in Excel anymore. It doesn't work anymore. So you need to know that this will happen, and it will happen for different usage scenarios at different moments in time. But you need to know that they will happen. Most of the people don't know that they will hit a limit at some point. Now, when you know that these things happen, you need to make some decisions, whether you will build or buy things. When you are, I don't know, let's say eMAG, and you have hundreds or thousands of developers, you will often say, hey, we can build anything. But even 1,000 developers are finite numbers, and you cannot do everything. So you need to decide what you can and cannot do in-house. You need to make decisions whether you put your infrastructure on premises or on cloud or hybrid. You need to know that whether will it be open source or proprietary. You need to take into account the detail of your analysis versus the cost. And this is where I said that statistics training helps you reduce the cost, because otherwise you will keep your data in such a level of details that it will be very expensive no matter where you keep it. You also need to make a decisions whether you need to have a central data team or embedded data teams that are working in the various business domains. Another challenge is the data governance. The more data you have, the harder it is to keep track of it, to know where it is, who uses it. Also, there are legal requirements, and those are the hardest because people making laws don't really come here to understand what our challenges are. And they say, hey, you should be doing that. You should know everything, who uses what data, and also you should not use this particular part of data here. And beyond that, you need to think about ethics. What can I use and what can I not use about our users? You need to take into account accuracy. Is my data correct? Is the input correct? Is the output correct? Are the KPI definitions correct? Also, timeliness. You need to know, everybody asks for real-time data, but this week, I think, I had a discussion with someone asking for data they said it needs to be available every hour. And they were making analysis over years of trends. You don't always need it real time. You need to see what data you need in real time and what data should not be real time, because real time is expensive. You need to take into account security. This is a whole new subject in itself. Also, monitoring and alerting. You need to know when things get wrong within your data infrastructure and have alerts and scenarios. And last, I will talk a bit about where we are in terms of organization. We have a data team of over 100 people. And for some people, that's a lot. But I just have a discussion with a VP yesterday telling, hey, we can never have all our projects done with so few people. What also happens in our company is that data teams started emerging in all kinds of departments where they say, hey, you guys are too slow, I'm having my own people doing the analysis. And we use business partners and communities to keep in sync with these people. We need to keep them in our ecosystem and use our tools and the data that we provide, because what usually happens is that they build some Excel files that they share around via email, and the data becomes obsolete before even it reaches the final destination. And what happens everywhere in the world right now is that data teams transforms from gatekeepers to enablers. And this is what we're trying to do at eMAG, to enable the rest of the company to do their own analysis, and where we provide the tools and the knowledge and the help that they need and the support that they need to do that. That's all I had to say, 2 minutes early.